For those of you who are just tuning in, I'm Ayisha Piotti, Managing Partner of RegHorizon and Director of AI Policy at ETH Zurich Center for Law and Economics. It's my great pleasure to have you with us for this keynote session with MEP Axel Voss on the EU AI Act. MEP Axel Voss has been a member of the European Parliament since 2009. He is the European People's Party's coordinator for the Committee on Legal Affairs, as well as deputy of the Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs. Moreover, he was also the rapporteur of the Special Committee on the Artificial Intelligence from 2020 until 2022. He has also been shadow rapporteur of many other EU dossiers, including the GDPR. Now, you can find his full bio on our event webpage. And during his address, MEP Voss will share the overall approach that EU is taking with regards to AI, the key elements of the EU AI Act, as well as next steps in terms of the process. Now, his keynote is going to last for about 25 to 30 minutes, and then we will have a Q&A session. So please do jot down your reflections and questions as you listen to him, and I will do my best, of course, to bring them into the discussion. MEP Voss, it's our great pleasure and honor to have you with us today. So without any further delay, I would like to pass the floor to you.
Thanks a lot, Ayisha, and thanks for this nice introduction, and also thanks for the invitation. AI is an extremely important issue, and I hope that we have a good exchange of views today. Because it's so important. We consider AI as a booster for the digitalization, and the meaning of AI can't be underestimated. So that's why I think it's extremely important also that we are getting this AI Act right. And I hope that we can still deliver something what is practical, what is supporting and supporting the AI itself as a technology, and also what might also support inventing of new technology and new business models and so on. So we have a lot to discuss in this AI Act. Of course, at first, this is the definition. Here, normally, the Commission came up from our perspective, or my perspective, with a very broad definition. And this is why I would say we need to focus on algorithms that are not producing like software always the same result. Then it wouldn't be a kind of an intelligent algorithm. So that's why we need to differentiate or to limiting the scope here a bit on these AI systems who are really can be named as artificial intelligence. So, and this would lead more and more to a kind of a situation where I would refer to the OECD definition. And this then might also help beyond the EU that we have, what we have in mind, what AI is. But then in addition, we are focusing on this in this AI Act on high risk AI systems. So, and at least what is high risk? And even here, I would say we are not differentiating enough so far that we might come forward with another idea of the Commission. They are focusing this a little bit on critical infrastructure and so on, and give some details in the annex of this act. And this is what I would consider is not detailed enough and not clear enough, so that we not only should focus on the environment of the AI, like critical infrastructure. No, we should also have a closer look to the critical use, to the context in which context it might be used. And then we can decide better on what is an AI high risk system. So these are, from my point of view, 2 points already where we have to discuss and exchange. Let me say from the beginning, the Commission just proposed also at the end of September a so-called AI Liability Act. So this is a directive so far. And this means then the member states, this is addressed to the member states, that they should come up with a liability regime for AI. And here, this is something what we need to discuss later on, because it's just out. It's not distributed right now in the parliament. What we also should have in mind that there is, and this has to be discussed in connection or with a link to sandboxes, how we can prepare ourselves, especially in Europe, where we do not have enough data, or where the data protection regulation is limiting the use of data. Here we have to think about how we can enable the business, and also supporting the training of algorithms. And there we have this idea, and the Commission came up with this idea with so-called sandboxes. And because the GDPR is limiting the processing of data in its purpose, and also if you are processing data, you should also only concentrate on the minimum data set. And here we are coming probably to a problem. So the European legislator is expecting a lot from the results of an AI system, especially if I can name only 3 of it, beside of this explainability, robust and secure and in line with GDPR, but also having in mind that these algorithms should not be biased, and also that should be not discriminatory, and it should be gender balanced. And here, for these results, what we have in mind is that you need a lot of personal data. You will massively need data, and especially personal data, to train your algorithms also on these specific points. And the GDPR so far, I would say, are not allowing these. So far, that's why we need to have a kind of a solution. Synthetic data might not all the time lead to what the deployer would have in mind. Of course, you can anonymize data. In health data, probably you have to pseudonymize the data, because at a certain point you need to go back to the patient. But anyway, we need to have something where our business can train the algorithms, and this can be done by these sandboxes. So I'm describing right now all the issues where we should discuss, or what we should discuss, and what we should think about, and so on. And if we are once again thinking on these issues, how a result might look like with these non-biased, non-discriminatory, and gender balance, and so on, here there should be standards will come into the scenery, where we are saying, oh, how to fulfill all these, what we have in mind, that the result of an AI system might be very correct, and so on. And how can we link these with this technology? And this, from my point of view, has to be a standardization program. There is an article into it, I think Article 40 is it, where we are talking about standards, but this, from my point of view, has to be more precise and more concrete insofar that if you're using then this kind of standard, that you are then fulfilling also what we have in mind. Of course, what we are always thinking, and this is something where we are more than less agreeing in the parliament, but some of our political parties are exaggerating these, of course, also, but that we need a kind of a trustworthy AI in practice. This would mean ethical guidelines in a way, so that this is lawful, ethical, robust, and so on, respect for human autonomy, preventing of harm, fairness, applicability, and so on. And this would also then mean human agency or human oversight, privacy, data or privacy and data governance, transparency, and so on. So this is what we all would have in mind if it's coming to AI. But then, once again, we need also to have kind of a solution in place. And I hope that we can, with these trustworthy AI concept, also convince everyone that if you're deploying your AI system and if you're following these rules, that this then might have a kind of an impact from the beginning. And of course, then we are asking also for a lot of safeguards, obligations, and so on. And this is something where we have a kind of a tendency in having too much bureaucracy probably on board. If you're looking to all these single issues from these Article 9 till Article 51 and so on, where you have the requirements for high-risk AI systems or the obligations for the providers and users of an AI high-risk system, then you might think, oh, this is already too much. But if you're looking to these individually, to each point, then you might say, oh, yes, might be a good point. But here, so far, we do not have a kind of a best balanced situation in our discussion here in the parliament. But that if we are categorizing AI high-risk systems or an AI system as a high-risk system, then of course we need some requirements for this system, and we need also some obligations or safeguards in place. And this might be the risk management, data governance system or structure, technology, document or technical documentation, the record keeping, transparency, human oversight and accuracy, robustness, and cybersecure. And of course, in all of these points, we can still exaggerate everything, but I hope we can have a kind of a balanced situation that we are not exaggerating these too much. So what we have done so far on the European level, so this was more than less a kind of an overview to this proposal and where I see potential for discussions. And of course, the digital oversight is also something what we still need to discuss. Normally, I would say I'm not a big fan of a kind of a new European AI agency, but I need more and more the necessity in streamlining various parallel governance systems. So we came up with the Digital Market Act, the Digital Services Act, the Data Governance Act, the AI Act now, and probably also the so-called NIS directive regarding the cybersecurity issues. So, and here we have to ask ourselves in the long run, shouldn't we support a kind of a single EU agency for all digital matters? So if so, should we upgrade existing or one existing entity already, or should we create a new one? So these are some ideas where we have to think about. In the JURI committee, we talked already about that we, till 2027, we can only have a kind of a solution because of budgetarian problems, that we can only come with a kind of a governance structure, the coordination on the Commission level and the strengthening of the structures in the member states. But what is for all of us very important, or for a majority in the House, let me put it this way, that we need here full harmonization. Otherwise, it wouldn't make sense if we are fragmenting ourselves. And here, having in mind also that the European, let's say, data industry or AI industry is so far lagging behind. And that's why we need to come forward with a proposal here, what's also supporting the European industry in a way that we can be a player or play also a role in the developments of AI. And this is what I would like to mention in general. Of course, we have had so-called, I do not know if everyone is accustomed to these expressions, but we have had these shadow meetings, so where all political parties are discussing their amendments, and we have had 2 of them already. And so far we tried to align a little bit these amendments, and we have had the discussions about what we are calling now of batch 1 is the situation of notified bodies. This is Article 30 till 39. And we agreed more than less also on this batch 2 on certificates, declaration and conformity issues. And this is covering Article 42, 44 until 50. So these and Annex 8. So this is what we have done in the first shadows meeting. And the second shadows meeting, we were also, this is not only what we have done in the first meeting. We discussed also some articles, especially in the derogation from conformity assessment procedure. One part in the parliament would like to delete it at all. We are totally opposing these because we think it's still necessary to have a kind of a situation where we can derogate from these conformity assessment procedures, urgency, the cases, and so on. Then there is also kind of a big discussion regarding Article 54 and 53. We have some problems here, especially probably we are understanding with the sandboxes, every political party something differently. What I have to criticize is that a part of our, more than less probably also a majority in our House, is approaching this AI Act not as a kind of a product regulatory instrument. They are approaching these more than less as a consumer protection right. And this is something where we can't really be satisfied with, because only thinking in protection dimensions will never lead to something where we would say we would like to be a kind of a player. What we are all thinking is, yes, Europe can provide something to the world if we can link values with technology, and especially also here in AI. But of course, knowing we have to be as fast as other regions in the world. And this is something where we are more lacking or creating more problems than necessary. So you see, we have done our start of discussed some of these articles already, and also in these second, sorry with the light, and with this second round of shadows meeting, we tried also to discuss already the biometric data situation. And here, once again, we have extreme political differences. So I would say, just in general, also probably a kind of a majority is saying of facial recognition or predictive policing or using some emotional recognition instruments or something similar has to be deleted or has to be banned. And this is what I personally do not understand, because there are already privacy law in place. There is technology in place what might reduce the infringement of the individual already. Therefore, you don't have to ban everything. And I do not see this as a way forward in being then future orientated and technology open. So you see that, but this is more than less a kind of an ideological fight. If you can use technology and just finding a kind of a less intrusive way forward, or if you're just saying you're banning everything what you don't like. So for us as an EPP group, we are totally not supporting this idea. And but this is still what we have to discuss. But here you can see already, as an industry, you should be aware of this, what we are doing. And if you think this is going in the wrong direction, you have to be very loud. What we also discussed in a way, and this is what we agreed on already in the JURI committee, but this doesn't mean that we are taking this over everything for the main rapporteur level. So in so-called the committees LIBE and the IMCO committee, so for internal affairs and for the common market. So this would mean that we probably do not have an exemption, or what we have integrated is an exemption for research, so that these is not part of the AI Act, that we have a research, an exemption also for B2B, and an exemption for, I've forgotten these, unfortunately, but I will come back to these. But the law enforcement probably also needs a kind of a special treatment. But we have done this with the GDPR, that we have the GDPR for the more than less private situation, and also the situation for law enforcement purposes. And here we are not differentiating these. That's why law enforcement might be integrated. I'm not convinced that this is the right way forward. And probably we are facing with the European Council a little bit another approach of it. And so this is what we have done. And regarding the upcoming process, so far we have in every so-called Strasbourg week one additional shadow meeting, and the technical level is working in the Brussels time. That's why then we will have a kind of a discussion then in Strasbourg about this, what they are preparing here in Brussels. But once again, this is not giving me so far a kind of a signal that what we are doing is going in the right direction. So far, some parties are concentrating too much on protecting and probably not knowing what might be the consequences out of it in digital issues. And therefore, I'm looking to this process so far very critical. It might come to the situation that we are coming to an end with our parliamentary negotiation in March, or that we can vote in April or in May in the plenary at the end, before in the committees. And at least we should start after the summer break in 2023 with the so-called trilogues, and hopefully then coming to an end to the end of next year. So this is what I can predict right now, or what I try to predict. It depends what results we might have at the end. So for the GDPR, we took our time. I think it has been, it lasted 5 years here in the House. And I consider the AI Act extremely more important than the data protection. It was a core element to start with, yes. But if we are not now catching up with the digital developments, then it might be end up for Europe very cruel. So, and this is something what we can't let happen. If you're asking in general, every political group, yes, they will probably say, yes, they are supporting the development in Europe regarding AI. But if it's coming to the specific provisions, then all of a sudden you see that they are more than less orientated in a way to protect everything. So I hope this gives you a kind of a good overview. So we will discuss and further develop everything. So this is under construction in a way, so that I can give you just kind of an overview how it stands today. And I hope this gives you some ideas where the problems are. And I'm asking everyone who is dealing with AI or who is deploying it and trying to get a business model with AI out of it, please be aware what we are doing, and if it's necessary, please be loud.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. I think that was a good overview. I mean, for those audiences who are actually joining from other parts of the world, right? I mean, when we listen to you, and this is just, you know, from a perspective from the outside world, it's obviously a very complex set of affairs. I also heard that there's almost, and you were very good in highlighting some of those hot topics or sort of different differences that currently exist, you know, the definition being one of them, you know, what is being banned or not, and how we're going to do the assessments. What you think about is it's obviously, and here looking again from the outside, you at the same time also mentioned we have other, you know, legislative acts as well coming out of Brussels. So you talked about the AI Liability Act, you have the Digital Markets Act, AI, you know, and all sorts of things going on. You know, when we look at it from the outside, the question would be, you know, it seems to us also to a certain extent that not everybody is looking at it the same way the EU is. So if you think about it from the US perspective, if you think about it from the Chinese perspective, to a certain extent, also from a Swiss perspective, right? So, I mean, I understand also the vision for the EU is you know, sort of have a Brussels effect of what you're doing. Where does all this stand in terms of AI diplomacy, for example? Because, you know, of course, it's important for us. And what is the EU doing now to ensure that this vision and all this is really going to become a reality and it's going to be adopted by other parts of the world?
This is hard to predict right now. So the idea is, of course, that we will have a kind of a rule in place where we can say, so this is how the European society is dealing with algorithms. There's a kind of a science fiction picture in everyone's head that all of a sudden AI might take over the lead in everything what they have. So I think the best way forward also for the outside of the EU to concentrate more on these standards issue, of course. I hope we can regulate this in a way that also third countries then have the possibility and also coming to these and joining the common market and coming forward to these. I know that the complex situation on the European level in this legislation is not understandable for everyone. But it's probably it's most important that we are coming with this regulation instead of a directive, means full harmonization of fragmented common market. With the directive, more this fragmentation, and with the regulation, you have a harmonized market. So, and this is quite important in digital issues. The idea behind, of course, for me, not for the others probably, but for me is how Europe can survive in digital developments. That's why I'm approaching these more with this idea, how we can enable innovation in a way. And the others are approaching these a bit on this, how we can protect our citizens. And this, of course, has to be balanced. And I hope this is also acceptable from this general and very abstract idea in third countries. But to get a balance politically, it's very hard to get. So, and this is, I hope that we are not coming to a situation where we are delinking ourselves with international standards or ways of how you are or others are approaching the algorithms. We are still convinced that we need some regulation in place, but it should give you also a lot of space for maneuver at the end, and that we are just concentrating on these so-called high-risk AI systems. This might be 15% of what is already, or what might be developed in the future, but you can't be sure if we are getting another approach, then all of a sudden you have 85% in, and then we are totally out of this development.
Well, for the high risk, actually, we have a very interesting question here, because we understand that, you know, how you do, what is going to be high risk or not. There is, of course, discussions around there. And here in the chat, we have somebody sort of saying, why not sort of probably think about following a sandbox kind of approach, even to define who could be high risk or not? Is that something that could be considered? Is that something that is looked at?
Yes. Still, what I try to explain is that to use personal data, this is not really a possibility because of the GDPR. But you will need this personal data for training your algorithms to come to best results. And that's why we then should find a way to provide these data to train your algorithms. And we have there two cases, probably companies, they might have their own data already, and that they can use this with a different purpose than for what they have this collected. And the second case might be startups, for instance, who do have anything at all data, and then they need data to train their algorithms in a way. And this, the sandboxes should provide, and also there's a governance in place where you can have then a situation that you can, although you have the GDPR in place, you can have here some exceptions in training. Because of the training, this will be supervised, and you can't take these personal data then outside this sandbox. And so, and this is the idea of the sandbox thing.
Okay. Now, another question, actually, which is coming is also, since, we are here at the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology, a lot of, brains and a lot of scientists, computer scientists, professors. And the question really is, what are the ways for some of these people to actually get involved hands-on into the political debate and the EU Act? I mean, how is that process working? Because we understand, of course, there's a lot of business input, there is a lot of other input, and I think I would add to this question also one specifically in terms of academia and research and computer scientists and other, probably even smaller companies. So I'd like to have your view on what's happening on that one, like SMEs, startups, plus also computer scientists.
So, because on the European level, you have different ways to try to influence or to make yourself heard. So at first, this is a commission when they are initiating what this phase is over already. And now the two legislators, the European Council and the European Parliament, will discuss about the content of this AI Act. And here, of course, in the Parliament, we have now 7 political groups with different approaches or different ideas, but and we have this round who is negotiating these, and here you might have a chance in influencing them and trying to get to discuss these with these MEPs, and that's why you might be heard also and understood. Of course, this is handled differently in these political groups, but this is a chance in saying, oh, what you're doing is going too far, or you have to be aware of this problem, and so on. And of course, the governmental side is more than less that you should also try to influence your government or the governments of the member states of the European Union, and then this might lead to something. So, of course, the associations, the business associations or digital associations here on the European level, also located in Brussels, they are trying their best already. And also some of these bigger companies, they are also trying to influence these. And but you should do this. I know lobbying is always criticized. I see this very necessary, especially in these digital issues, because we are not the experts in doing this. We are trying to be a kind of a legal expert in solving and balancing problems, but in the detail and the technique and technology, you are the experts, and you have to tell us what is possible and what is not possible, and how we can come forward and how not.
Yeah, another question, actually, there are 2 questions which are a little bit on the same, and you mentioned it right in your opening remarks when you say, well, the EU AI Act started off as more like a product directive, and now it's becoming more like consumer protection. Now, this is a very ideological question, but at the same time, I mean, people are expecting that protection, and somehow they are looking at the EU AI draft and everything that EU is doing for that. And we've got 2 questions. One basically pretty much a comment saying, well, isn't what the EU trying to do is to protect the humans, and the other one basically saying, what is your view to have, strong human right impact assessment before any AI is really deployed? And shouldn't we be using this for that? So the fact that there is this ideological, my question would be, you've started something, it's sort of kind of become something completely different. And now, are you, and you talked about, and you've got 33,000, how many, 33,000 or 30,000, I don't remember, amendments that have been already proposed. And you still have this timeline, and you want to get over the line. I mean, shouldn't you sort of kind of think back and say, well, at the ideological level, we seem to be having quite a lot of questions, and maybe we can reflect and not just steamroll into something?
I agree with what you have said, especially if you're seeing the importance of this act. I would like to take the time for doing this right. And here it seems that the main rapporteurs from both committees are trying to rush through this act. And this is what I do not consider is very helpful, because then you might miss something, or you're going to the wrong side of this with, or having consequences what we probably do not want, and so on. So yes, you're right. So there should be because you mentioned the assessment in this, I think Article 19, there is the so-called conformity assessment. This should be done especially, but of course only then if you have an AI high-risk system in place. So it shouldn't be done by every AI system, only for these high-risk ones. And yes, there is a danger that the speed in legislation now leads to different or to negative impacts. And this is what I personally would like to avoid. But what I can't avoid is the approach, the more ideological approach of other political parties. I still have the feeling they are misunderstanding what we are doing. They are just seeing everywhere kind of a danger, instead of, and this is also what we have done with the GDPR, we are giving a kind of a guideline. If you have an AI system in place, and this is high risk, what you then have to do. So the legitimate use of an AI high-risk system, this is then described here. This should be these, what I would say, regulatory or the product regulatory moment, and not trying to avoid or trying to avoid regulatory instruments of how to protect individuals. This is not only the case here, what we should focus on. We should give this guideline. If you would like to have an AI high-risk system in place, then do what we are listing here, and then you are fine.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, and that just we're running out of time, but I mean, I think I have a lot of questions, even if there are not that many more left here, but we can continue the conversation another time. But the other thing that and I'm just thinking about it from the other people, because this will have, irrespective of whatever we say, if the EU AI Act goes through, it will have an impact for the other parts of the world, including Switzerland, including other parts of the world. And one of the things we are concerned, of course, about, and that's the mindset we have, is how flexible is the legislation, right? So you are going to come up with something, and then you're going to have it down as law. Whilst the technology is just moving, we are going to have a sort of an externality effect in the other parts of the world, and those of us joining us from all different parts of the world. And the question is, how flexible are you planning to be with the technologies?
That's a very good question, and this is what I'm asking all this time in this legislative term already, that the legislator need to be more flexible in digital issues to catch up with the developments. And this is what we already mentioned in the so-called AIDA report. Yes. So this means AI in a digital age and so on. And so therefore we are asking for this. But I see no one so far in preparing the procedures to it. That's why, but this is really a problem, what you are mentioning. If we are not flexible enough in updating these on and on and on, then we are totally outdated. Like what I consider always with the GDPR, After a couple of years, we are seeing new technologies coming up with it. This is creating a lot of problems and different interpretations, and nobody is, of the uncertainties what this is creating is not helpful. And that's why I would like to see a kind of a constantly updating of the list of high-risk AI Annex, what is Annex 3 in this act, where we have listed all these bans and what is high risk and what might be considered as, and so on. And you're totally right. If we are not getting the flexibility, then it might be extremely quick outdated.
Right, right. And I mean, if you talk about GDPR, my understanding is that the enforcement has been left to member states, and as a result, maybe not a great solution either in terms of, proliferations. And now we're trying to have an agency. How is that going to be? How is it going to work? I think there are lots of, from the outside, it looks like lots of open questions, right? and the timeline you talked about was what, 2023?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, I think that's all we have time for. I don't know if we have any other questions from the chat. I will just see, because we've had this fantastic day with lots of discussions, but it was really good to hear you, and I'm hoping that we're going to continue the dialogue, and welcome to also our community of experts, and thank you so much and all the best. And we are not necessarily directly a part of the European Union, but of course we're watching very closely, not just from Switzerland, but also all our viewers from the other parts of the world as well, what's going on. So best of luck, and thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation, and please let us catch up with the newer developments. So whenever you think it's necessary, you're very much welcome.
We'll be reaching out. Thank you so much. I wish you a very nice evening, and thank you for your time.
Yes, you're welcome. All the best to you all. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.